Nobody likes rules.
It won't be easy creating a new society from the ground up.
Well, a helpful rule might be if you need something, you get it. Pretty simple, right?
Nobody likes people who make rules, and nobody likes people, especially, who enforce the rules.
I need food.
Who's got food for that guy?
I do, but this is for me.
Can't you make some more?
Oh, sure. And while I'm making food for everyone, who takes care of my kids?
I'll take care of your kids if I get some extra food for it.
Rules are boring, they're mean and oppressive, and they get in the way of fun.
Extra food?
Well, I'm not gonna do extra work if we all get the same.
All right, okay, fair's fair. If you do extra work, you get extra food.
But it turns out if you're trying to take a group of people who used to be enslaved and turn them into a society that will ultimately be a city on a hill, a beacon of hope for the entire free world, you're going to need some rules to get that to happen.
Who's gonna keep track of who gets how much food for how much work?
Hello, I can do that. I'll keep track of everyone's food, in exchange for food.
So we're looking at the 10 Commandments, and I think you will find that these 10 thou shalt nots, actually not all 10 are thou shalt nots, but we'll get into that, have more hope and grace in them than the church has led you to believe.
That's not a real job.
Oh, and making food is...
You son of a...
And that's what we're talking about this week.
Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all, welcome once again to the Kindred UMC pre-recorded live show, coming to you not live, but pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden. I am the pastor of Kindred UMC.
My name is Ann, and I'm the treasurer for Kindred UMC.
My name's Taylor, and I'm your resident gay, non-binary, exploring candidate.
Guys and gals and non-binary pals. Yeah,
yes.
There you go. We are starting a new series this week that will go for the next several weeks about the 10 Commandments. Now, before we read, let me just ask you, generally speaking, where's your starting place with the 10 Commandments?
Don't murder people.
That's true. That is one of them.
I grew up Presbyterian, and I always joked that Presbyterians only care about like 3 things, and the 10 Commandments was one of the 3.
Yes,
like you should do that.
Do you know what they are?
Ooh.
No, most Christians can't spot them off.
6 or 7 of them.
Right, yeah.
I know a good amount of them. I don't think I know all 10 of them.
I'll tell you, so in my experience, most people know the people ones.
Yeah.
So, all right, a little bit of structure. Jesus, when asked what's the most important law, famously quoted the Shema. Does anybody know what the Shema is? When Jesus was asked what the most important law is, he said, it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and he added strength, because the Shema in the Old Testament doesn't have strength, but whatever. He's Jesus, we'll give him a pass, And then he also said, love your neighbor as yourself. And so all the law hangs on these 2 ideas. Love God, love neighbor. The 10 Commandments, it's like, how do I please God? Well, love God and love your neighbor. Okay, great. Well, how do I love God? I was like, oh, well, here's 5 rules that will help you love God. How do I love my neighbor? Here's 5 more rules. It's actually not 5. There's like a split point about the Sabbath that's more about self-care isn't that an act of grace that one of God's rules is take care of yourself? We'll talk about that in a few weeks. But so basically this is kind of a structural understanding of the 10 Commandments. Love God, love neighbor, and then the 10 Commandments are kind of split in half based on those. How do I love God? Well, here's a list, So there's multiple, we call them decalogues. That's like a seminary word. It just means there's 10 of them,
Oh, okay.
There's multiple decalogues throughout Scripture, but the 2 that we think of as the 10 Commandments come from Exodus and Deuteronomy. We're going to look at Exodus because it's the OG. It was the first one. It's the one if you're old like me and you've ever seen the movie The 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, where he comes down with the 2 tablets and he's Moses, and it's like, that's what this is.
I definitely pictured iPads, and then I realized you said old, and that was not
Yeah, no, tablets of stone.
Tablets of stone. Right.
Yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. So this is from Exodus chapter 20. So this is after Israelites they were enslaved in Egypt. They were rescued by God through a series of miraculous events, and all kinds of incredible things happened. And now they have the opportunity to form themselves, who were once enslaved, as like a free society, but you still need rules to govern people. And so that's kind of what this is. This is the beginning of the agreement that the Israelites make with God. I'll be your God, you'll be my people. This is how it'll work, basically. So Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 3, this is the first of the 10 commandments. Then God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment.
Before we continue, I want to remind you that we, for the foreseeable future, are collecting funds for a group called Zoe Empowers. They quite literally empower communities with skills and entrepreneurial education to make their own businesses and make an economy and a living in their own community. We've been assigned a community in Rwanda, and every dollar you give to this channel goes directly to helping those people. So please use the QR code over here or any of the links down below, or you can mail a check P.O. Box down below to Kindred UMC, and all of that will go to help the people in Rwanda that we are getting to know as we speak. So let's continue.
So first of all, thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, just as you hear it. How would you summarize this law to somebody who has never heard it before?
It's like the story in Daniel when they're praying to the silver gods or whatever like the
Silver, wood, iron, gold,
don't do that.
Go check out that video, by the way.
Don't do that. You know, that's what I'm saying. That's what it's saying. Is like,
don't do that.
No, it's only me.
Yeah.
I'm the only one.
Okay. Good starting place. I agree mostly, but I'll point out an interesting detail that it took me like 5 times of reading it before I noticed, but we'll talk about it.
I remember, like, the first thing I thought of, and I might be misremembering, but I feel like the one thing that they talked about a lot when I was a kid was also like, that means you don't put any material or like, don't get too full of yourself either. You know, like, don't be so...
Don't like idolize yourself. That's what I grew up hearing.
Like that was kind of a big... People. I don't know if because we were younger, they were worried.
The second commandment, which is very closely related to this, that we'll talk about next week, but we're going to talk about in a minute, is don't make idols.
Yeah. Because that's also what that kind of reminds me of.
So and they are very closely, these two they're almost like one commandment together, but they are separate. And we'll talk about that in the next video. But yeah, like you're on the right track too with like, it's not wrong to kind of combine those two. That is the essence of it.
Because I also grew up Presbyterian, so it was very like, don't like, and then I was non-denominational. So then it was like, really don't idolize people. And then I was like, you told me to idolize you, but that's fine. Sorry.
It's like, you're asking me to idolize you every single week.
So that's kind of that's what I would summarize it as for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So excellent observations. I don't really disagree with any of that, although there's an interesting detail that we'll talk about in a minute. So, and this is a bit of a trick question, not a trick question, but like a surprise question, because I've talked about it before. Anytime you hear the Lord your God, do you know what that is? Because the scripture, especially Old Testament, uses it a lot. I am the Lord your God is the beginning of this.
I've never put 2 thoughts into it.
So
it's not Yahweh.
Yes, it is.
It is Yahweh.
Yes.
Okay.
So anytime in the Old Testament, when you're reading in English at least, when you see capital L-O-R-D, like all caps, that's not the Lord, that's the name of God. That's God's name that God gave to the Israelites as a personal name for God. So, and we say Yahweh in English.
So it's a chosen name. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Bookmark that one.
Yeah. So what it is so Lord your God in Hebrew, Yahweh Elohim. Okay. Elohim is just the word God, and it's actually technically it's the word gods. It's a plural word, and so when you read in like Genesis chapter 1. The 7 days of creation, God, there was darkness and God said, let there be light, and God creates light, and then God creates everything by speaking it into existence. That's Elohim. And it's actually God's, which is interesting. It's God's speaks, let there be light, and then there's light. But that's because the culture that this was written for and the context it was written in, there wasn't God, there was gods. And so when it says gods, El is like one of the most ancient names for God in human history, El. And Elohim is gods. And so the 7 days of creation is gods. And then God's created this, and then God's created that. And it's not literally that, because there is an understanding of there being a singular God, a singular personhood to God, but there's also this initial understanding of a triune God too. And it's very interesting. It's very deep. So there's a pantheon of pagan gods. And so sometimes in scripture, they'll capitalize that with a capital G, God. And sometimes they'll use a lowercase g. In this case, I am the Lord your God, capital G. You shall have no other gods before me, lowercase g. Same exact word though, because it's gods. You shall have no other gods. It's the same exact word. So I am Yahweh Elohim, you shall have no other Elohim but me. You know, and this is the detail I wanted to talk with you about that you mentioned. It doesn't say you shall have no other gods but me. It says you shall have no other gods before me.
It does.
And isn't that interesting? Isn't that wildly interesting? So before God gives a rule, before God gives the rule of you shall have no others, what does God say? Do you remember? I am the Lord your God. I am Yahweh. And the Yahweh, by the way, personal name, Elohim, God of all creation. So it's like, I'm the big God who you know.
But here's my name.
Yeah. It's like, it's that. It's the, like, you know my name. I breathed life into your nostrils. And I created everything, and I love you, and I'm here for you, and So do you remember, what does God remind them of before he gives a command?
Oh.
I'm the Lord your God who...
Something about Israel.
Yes. And where was Israel before this?
You said it. They were...
I believe in you.
I don't believe in me.
They were...
the Exodus story. Yeah, they were captive.
Yeah.
They were slaved. Slavery in... Does anyone remember?
It was Egypt, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I had faith in you, not me.
Yeah. No, you got there. So
there's a cool movie about it.
There's actually several cool movies. I highly recommend Prince of Egypt over the Charlton Heston. It's just newer, that's all.
Yeah.
So before God gives a rule, God says, I am the God who created everything, whom you know. Who rescued you out of slavery from the brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And so, like, there's a statement being made here. My impression is that most people, when they think about the Ten Commandments in our culture, they think about an angry, bearded white guy in the sky who is going to condemn you to hell if you don't follow the rules. You know what I mean? And in fact, the starting place is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
The starting place is, I came to you in your hour of need. I heard the cry of my people. I worked miraculous works to bring you out of oppression and slavery, to give you a community based on freedom of your own. That's the beginning of the Ten Commandments. And then he says, make me most important. Because of these things, make me most important.
Kind of crazy that he says gods. I'm still stuck on that.
Yeah, well, and that is an Old Testament. That's throughout the entire. Yeah. We call the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, and throughout the rest of the Old Testament too. That is just the way that Israelites thought about and understood and named God. It's Elohim. It's gods. I am Yahweh gods. You know, so here's the thing. Make me first. Okay. I was talking with a young man who desperately wanted to believe in God and couldn't buy it. Was just having a hard time. Like, scientific thinker, logical person. This guy was just like, I really want to, but I just don't buy it. And my engagement with him was, well, let's talk about what God is. So, like, is God a bearded man in the sky, or is God something more than that? Which, by the way, will also tie into next week's video. Because if we think about God as like a bearded man in the sky who's gonna, I'll burn you alive if you don't love me. It's like, God, that sounds like an abuser. That sounds like a person we should lock up, you know? But it begs this question: what is God? And that's a big question. So let me give you a little bit of guidance before I kind of like set you, because like if I just, so what do you think God is? You know, like, so I would say there's something to, so like, how does this sit with you? And like, please respond to it. I would say that God is, because there is something rather than nothing, God is the observable force of creation because something happened. Mm-hmm. And also I would say, even on our small little planet and our own little small human civilization, we have been moving from violent, animalistic, disparaging others who don't look like us and don't think like us. We've been moving from that kind of mentality to a place where we have the potential to abolish slavery. We have the potential to instill democracy in much of the world. We have the potential, even just recently, marriage equality, acceptance of like actually looking at racial bias in our systemic policies. Like we have been moving from animals who hate each other and fight for resources into, and certainly not perfectly.
Yeah.
Certainly not perfectly, but I would describe it, I've been using this phrase a lot, I would describe it as stumbling uphill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like we've been getting better as a people for the history of humanity. I would posit that is evidence of what God is. God is the force that moves us from, let's call it chaos, in a traditional philosophical word, moving us from chaos to order. And I would argue that that's what God really is. Like, what do you think of that? How does that sit with you?
I mean, when you first said, what is God? I pictured an orb, like, literally just like a thing, because like, I've never thought of God as like a person. Like that's never, other than like Morgan Freeman, but like,
yes,
that's pretty much it.
As we all know.
All should, in my opinion. But I picture like an orb that's just kind of there. Like when you take a picture, you know, sometimes like the light catches weird and you get little orbs. That's immediately what I picture. But I think God is I don't think you can have a society where you learn to love people without God. I don't think that, because
I agree with you
in
very
regards
strongly.
with what you're saying, I don't think we could have moved that without love through it. Like lovingly doing it, and that's where I think we're missing I think it could be pretty perfect if we had a little bit more of it. Mm-hmm. Not to say that we should like post the 10 Commandments everywhere and like burn children to hell.
Let's not be legalistic.
Not do that.
We've got a really bad track record of being legalistic about it.
But I think if we truly learn to love thy neighbor as we're told, I think we could progress a lot further than we are. But I do think that God, like when I think of God, like the love is what I think of. Like, there could be no love between us if something didn't teach us what that love was.
Like you are a competitor for resources, and why don't I think of you that way at all?
Right.
I think of you as a friend and someone who not only do I want to help, but I just want to be like friends, like I want to be in community with.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not just I want to help, it's more like, how's your day?
Yeah.
You know, and like, how did we get there? How did we get from competing for food
people? Yeah.
and like, you know, reproductive mates and all the animalistic tendencies that we can think of, that certainly we succumb to often.
Yeah.
But not nearly like it used to be.
Yeah, it's not 1492 when we're just murdering each other for land. And
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mostly.
Well, well, a lot significant parts of the world have gotten significantly better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say
I
that.
truly think that like love is kind of the driving force for me.
Yeah.
When I think.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely.
Because I don't think we could be where we are if we weren't.
Yeah.
No, for sure. I had an old roommate of mine, and she and I had similar thoughts on stuff. And she always joked that, God must be some kind, because like everybody wants to argue the science, right? So she was like, well, I believe in both. So like God's got to be like a scientist, right? Like he's got to be creating and doing all these things. And there's so interesting. If you do homeopathic medicine at all, there's a lot of stuff about the energy, and that's why like if your house is wired wrong, you'll get sick more often because it'll like unbalance you and things like that. There's an entire study of this, and I don't know how this is going way back in my brain, but it talks about the Big Bang and how it all came about, and it was like two hands coming together.
Like clapping.
But in some way, you got to think about like love, the energy. Like there's something about how the world functions and goes round, and how things just are,
and how they work.
And energy is the only way that I can put it into a science. Right.
That gravity is gravity. That mathematically things work out. That there's a universal speed limit on information.
Yeah.
Called the speed of light. like the fact that there are all these structures in place, it's like something did this.
That just happens to work.
Right, yeah.
The grace
Oh,
and the love.
I think that my belch may have come through the mic. Excuse me. I apologize.
But you know what I mean? Like, yes, we have all the science and the math and the how, and like there's something guiding it, stumbling it up the hill.
Right.
But also that thing that has the love and the grace and the mercy and all the things. If we didn't have that, what would it be? I can't imagine. Yeah, it'd be pushing us uphill, but...
So, all right. So let's
be murdering each other on the way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we would destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
Which who knows, may happen.
Tomorrow.
God willing, we don't actually destroy ourselves. But so let's take all this kind of like interpretation and let's impose our interpretation on the text. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the text that says, I am the Lord your God, rescued you out of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. Okay. So I'm the big force behind everything who loves you personally.
Yeah.
I am Yahweh Elohim. I rescued you when you had nothing to offer me. Make the goodness and grace that I have shown you the aim of your life above everything else. Make the nature of who I am, love, rescue, forgiveness, reconciliation. Make me before everything else. And then I add this implication. And if you will do that, if you will follow this one simple first commandment, you can be a net force for good. Mm-hmm. You can be, yes, you will make selfish choices. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, you will choose to screw somebody over when you shouldn't have. You'll choose to lie when you shouldn't have. But if you'll make me your aim, you can be a net force for good, and in spite of those mistakes, grace and love and freedom and justice and courage and reconciliation and all the things that I'm about, you can be a force that extends that to people. Mm-hmm. Make me the primary aim of your life, and you will make a difference. Like, I think that is the first commandment. So, I'm trying to do better about time. So I'm calling it there. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.
All right, let's do another one.
Oh, well,
Yay!